Hello everybody. I want to talk about angle snaps, angle guides in this video. In X17, one of the updates they did was they made some changes and updates to angle snaps. Sometimes I call them angle guides. They help you to draw stuff at very precise angles. They're kind of like a snap. They snap to a very precise angle. One of the very first things I want to show is I want to show you a couple of icons and talk to you about the difference between these two icons and what they do. And so for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to create a custom toolbar. I'm going to right click somewhere in my toolbar area where there's no icons, and I'm going to click customize toolbars because I want to illustrate a couple icons here. And I'm going to click under this toolbar customization, I'm going to click tools, and I'm just going to type in angle. And so the first icon here is going to be this angle snaps, and I'm just going to drag it onto a part of the screen, and then it starts creating a custom toolbar. And then under display setting tools, there's a gray arrow. I want to take this first option here called angle snap grid and also add that to my custom toolbar. So now I have two icons. I have the angle snaps icon and the angle snap grid. What these two icons do, the first icon looks like a black L-shaped line with some red dotted lines. That's to actually turn on and off your actual angle snaps, angles guides. If you want, like I'm going to first draw a line here. Well, begin to draw a line. I'm going to click and drag. Well, before I do that, I'm going to turn off this angle snap grid, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But if I click and drag a line, it's not letting me just draw that line anywhere. It appears as if it's snapping to like distinct angles. If I wanted to turn that off, where I can draw a line at any freeform angle, this icon that looks like there's red dashed lines is highlighted blue. If I click on that, that's no longer highlighted blue. That will turn off angle snaps. Now I can draw a line at any angle I want. The issue with this is if you're trying to draw at a very specific angle, you're not going to be able to unless you open up the properties of your line, and under line length, I can type in a very specific angle and it will change that line to be at an angle. If I wanted to draw right from the beginning at very precise angles, I would want to turn on my angle snaps, which I just did. Now this will let me draw at very precise angles. If I wanted a visual aid of those angle snaps, Chief has an icon called Angle Snap Grid. By default, the Angle Snap Grid icon is probably not going to be on your toolbars, but like I showed earlier, if I right click in the open space where my toolbars are, if I click in the open space where there's no icon and click customize toolbars and click tools, the tools tab, and type in go and go to Display Setting Tools, and then there's an icon here for Angle Snap Grid, and I can just drag it over to an existing toolbar if I want. I'm going to drag it over here to this other toolbar. It was already on there, so I removed the duplicate. But what Angle Snap Grid does, it gives you a visual aid of your actual angle snaps. I gotta close out of this first, but I'm gonna click that icon where it shows a bunch of blue lines. Now, when I draw a line, click and drag and start, like I'm gonna draw a line here, notice I get some red lines on my screen like a spider web. This is showing, this is pretty much a visual aid showing all my angle snaps and angle guides and where their positions are in reference to what I'm currently doing on the screen. Now, some people have reported on the Chief forum, some people will have this pop up and they don't know why all of these lines are popping up when they're trying to do stuff, and they find that annoying. If for some reason you get this effect when you're trying to draw something or move something or copy something and you don't know why, add the Angle Snap Grid to one of your toolbars and see if that is turned on. And if it is, just turn it off and you won't get that spider web. Now, I like to use that and have that turned on because, like I mentioned earlier, it gives me a visual aid and kind of shows me what angle snaps I currently have configured to use when I'm moving stuff, copying stuff, drawing a line, drawing walls, whatever it is I'm doing. It gives me a visual aid where these angle snaps are in relationship to what I'm doing. Now, we're going to go into our preferences here. We're going to edit preferences. And we're going to adjust a couple settings here. Under Preferences, there's a tab here called Edit, and then there's a sub-tab called Snap Properties. If you want to control what color that Angle Snap Grid is, under Angle Snap Grid color, you can click in this box and you can specify what color you want to use for that Angle Snap Grid. Now, to make that Angle Snap Grid very, very visible, I chose the pink color just to make it really visible for this video, but you can change that to any color you want. You can have orange and have that Angle Snap Grid be orange. And then underneath that, it's a check mark box that says Display Angle Snap Grid. Earlier I showed you how to turn that Angle Snap Grid on and off by clicking on an icon that you added to either a custom toolbar or a toolbar already on the screen. But another way you can turn it on and off is by opening up your preferences and unchecking that box. If I uncheck that, that's going to be off. And so now I don't have it turned on. And to turn it back on, I can either click on the icon or go to Edit Preferences, Snap Properties tab, and then check mark Display Angle Snap Grid. If I want to edit my Angle Snap Grid or change the angles or increments of those angles that show up on the screen that I can snap to, I have a couple options of getting to that. I can go up here to Edit default settings, and then I can double click plan, and there'll be a tab here called Angle/Snap Grid. This allows me to the very top portion here allows me to configure these angle snaps. But there's an easier way to get to that. Over here on my toolbars, you might see an icon here that says Select Objects. If you double click that, you can enter in what is called the general plan defaults. You can enter the general plan defaults from the default settings like I showed earlier. Default settings plan will open up the general plan defaults, but the easiest way I find to access that is to double click on that Select Objects arrow and then click Angle/Snap Grid. I'm going to uncheck this additional angles for a moment. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But under allowed angles, I have an increments. This allows you to control the increment of your angle snaps. And so you're basically telling it how frequently you're wanting an angle snap. Are you wanting an angle snap every 90 degrees or every 45, 30, 22 and a half? And I'm just for the sake of this discussion going to select 30 degrees. And once I have that selected, I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to draw a line here, or start a line, I should say. Notice I'm now getting an angle snap at every 30 degrees. And so you have the ability to control that by double clicking on this icon, and under Angle/Snap Grid, your increments, you can change that to whatever you want. In some CAD programs, they have something called ortho mode. Ortho mode allows you to draw a line that is perfectly straight horizontal or perfectly straight vertical. If I wanted to imitate a true ortho mode where I'm just snapping a line to horizontal and vertical, and I didn't want those other increments, you can select this 90 degrees here, and then your line would snap to only horizontal or vertical. And it's not just drawing lines. With my angle snaps enabled, I can draw walls. I can draw railings. I can also move stuff. So if I click on this to move it, well, I'm going to change my angle snaps here to 45 degrees to show this. Well, I'll do 30 degrees here. It's not just drawing stuff, but I can, for some reason, I'm not sure why that's not working. Maybe it's a line that I gotta move. Well, I'll just drag the endpoint. Well, I should be able to do that. I'm going to do multiple copy. This will let me illustrate it. I, in my edit toolbar, clicked on multiple copy, and not only for drawing lines, walls, and railings, but if I copy something, I can copy items while snapping to my angle guides here. And so if I want to copy these about 30 degrees, I can copy those and snap using my angle snaps. Another option we have, I'm going to change this to 45, is we can type in additional angles. Right now I got this set where it's going to give me an angle snap at every 45 degrees, but you can do other angles as well. If I wanted to type in, for example, a roof pitch, in Chief Architect you can type in roof pitches by simply doing something like 6 space IN12. And Chief will recognize that as a roof pitch. I can even type in -6 space IN12. And just to show that that is truly a roof pitch, I'm going to change my dialog number / angle. I call these my dialog box units because these change the display unit of the things in the dialog box. And I'm going to click to pitch. And notice here I have angle snaps already set up for 4 and 12 and -4 and 12. And this is -36 and 12, but that's actually 90 degrees perpendicular to that 4 and 12 reference there. And so these first four are kind of like, it's 4 and 12 roof pitch and -4 and 12, and the next two are 90 degrees perpendicular to those 4 and 12 and -4 and 12 lines. And then I have the 6 and 12 and -6 and 12 roof pitch that I just added. So now when I start a line here, just to illustrate, I get those extra angle snap points or angle guides. And so that is one way you can draw, or like a 2D cross section. Let's say I'm trying to draw a detail here showing a roof overhang. I'm going to delete that 6 and 12 roof pitch to make this simpler. And I'm going to set this to 90 degrees. Let's say I want to draw a roof eave detail. I'm going to draw a box here. Maybe my roof has steel roofing panels on it that are 3/4 of an inch thick. And using my rotate handle, I can rotate this, but I can also snap to those angle guides. And so I just rotated this now, and this is now snapping to my 4 and 12 angle guide snap. For some reason that didn't change to 3/4 of an inch thick. So now I'm going to draw a cross box here, and I'm going to imitate a 2x4 for a roof purlin. So for height, I'm just going to make that 1.5 inches. Type in 3.5 inches for the width. Click OK. And just like I did with that regular polyline box, I can rotate this and snap it to my 4 and 12 roof pitch angle snap. I'm going to point-to-point move this. I can copy this again to imitate the top chord of a truss. Write this down and make this 5.5 to imitate this a 2x6 top chord. And maybe my truss here has a 12-inch energy heel, so I'm going to snap to the top edge of that top chord, draw a 12-inch line here, and then I'm going to copy this, bring this down, and I can rotate this, snapping back to horizontal. And then I'm going to copy this and reflect about the corner there. And again, let's say this line here, let's say I want this end here to be like truly vertical. I can click on that corner point of this polyline and I can snap to vertical and bring it down where it snaps to itself here. And then I can drag this over. I can drag this over. I can copy this 2x4 cross box. And again, I can, using my snap guides, angle snaps, make this vertical, and then change this to be a 2x6. So where it says 3.5, type in 5.5. Before I do that, I'm going to add a reference line here, just a normal line for a 12. I'm going to make the 16-inch to imitate a 60-inch overhang. And then going to move this 2x6. That's going to represent my subfascia. Maybe I want that to have a little gap, small gap from the underside of the roof panel. And what I'm illustrating here is using these angle snaps, angle guides that I just set up and altered, is I can pretty quickly here begin creating a detail. Now I'm not really going to go any further in this video, but that's just a demonstration of how you can use angle snaps, including the ones I set up for roof pitches, to start creating a detail of my roof eave very easily. There's also another function to angle snaps. I'm going to double click on this arrow again, and I want to have angle snaps be every 45-degree increments. And so now when I draw a line, notice I have an angle snap at every 45-degree increments. I'm going to double check my roof pitches here. My roof pitches. These additional angles, one thing I forgot to mention is you can turn these off. If you only want just the default angle snaps that are created from using one of these increments, you can deselect additional angles, turn that off, and then you will only get angles the increments of, I have mine set to 45 degrees or whatever you have that set to. And then you can turn that back on later if you wanted to. And so this now has angle snaps at every 45 degrees, and also my angle snaps for the 4 and 12 roof pitch. A secondary function, I'm going to illustrate this by starting a line. If I click and drag, but I hold down the shift key, notice something happened, and I'm only getting an angle snap now at 90 degrees. But while holding down and starting a line, if I unhold or lift up from the shift key, notice I now get the angle snaps again that I had configured. And you might be thinking, well, what in the world? Well, if I go to Preferences here, not default settings, but Preferences, if I navigate to this Edit tab and then underneath that Snap Properties, you'll see a heading down here or a section called Other Snaps. And then you have a checkmark box for angle snaps. This checkmark box here where it says angle snaps is another way to turn your angle snaps on and off. And then like I showed earlier, underneath angle snap grid color is where you can say turn off the angle snap grid. When you turn off the angle snap grid, you want to remember you're not turning off the actual angle snaps. You're just turning off that visual aid that show you as you're doing things where those angle snaps are. And so to turn off the angle snaps, you would go down further and deselect this. But I don't want to do that. Another thing down here, you'll notice something called Angle Increment Override. What this does is this tells the program what angle snap guides you get or increment when you're holding down the shift key. And so I have my template file set up so that when I hold down the shift key, I'll get an angle snap at 90 degrees. And so I can imitate that ortho mode that is found in other programs by holding down the shift key. When I'm not holding down the shift key, I get the angle snaps that I have configured as set up in the general plan default. And so I'm going to illustrate that again one more time so you see that. And so I'm going to illustrate this with a wall. I'm going to click on an interior wall here. I'm going to click and start dragging. My wall is snapping to the angle snaps. Let's say this is making my head spin. There's too many angle snaps on the screen. Just hold down the shift key. And now I just got a true ortho mode. And so what you need to remember is under Edit Preferences, Snap Properties, and Other Snap, this Angle Increment Override controls what happens to angle snaps when they're turned on but you are holding down the shift key. And for this option, you have less increments to choose from. And so I like to set my angle snaps up to where under the general plan defaults, I'll set that to be the increment to be 45 degrees is what I tend to use. And then I might have other angle increments, like other snaps defined, like for maybe specific roof pitches. And then under my preferences, I like to have this set to 90 degrees. And so I hope this showed you a little bit about angle snaps and some of the changes that were made to them in X17. I feel like versus how they had it before, this might seem like it's a little more confusing, but these offer a lot more flexibility. Thank you.